Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Elisha Shwa, and we're going to talk about what does it mean to live if you're 120, till 120. Now, if I give you that time frame, what do you think about? I'd like to just a general brainstorm as we go into this. Give me a bit about, if you were to live to 120, what are the key words that come to mind? Feel free to speak out. Quality of life. Retirement. Sorry? New needs, relationships, what else? Health. Sorry? Tech assistant. And talking about tech assistant, can I get a mic in the room because I cannot hear enough? Is there a way to have a couple mics to the audience? Right, so we heard tech assistants, we heard retirement, we heard relationships, we heard a couple of other aspects, and you see that it touches about essentially system change, okay? And that's what we're going to explore today. But the way we're going to explore this is through a couple of tricks of facilitation, okay? And what I want to do is I want to help you understand both the systemic implications of this, but what does it mean from the individual's point of view, okay? So, and if we can close the doors, please, or leave at least one open, because I cannot really hear otherwise. I want you to comment on one nuance that you made. One was talking about retirement, right? The other one was about health. And the reason why that matters, and this is particularly in terms of the trends that we see in the market, is that there are sort of two kind of issues. So right now, if you look at how long we live, okay, we're living very much longer than what we had in the beginning of the 20th century, okay? Like right now we have more than 50, like within 2050 we'll have a lot of people, about I think between 40 and 50% depending on where you are, above 65. That was not the case 100 years ago. Okay, so life expectancy has had massive increase, which is great. Comes with economic growth, comes with more relationships, more time to live, etc. Problem is, we are spending a larger percentage of our life in bad health conditions. That's the point of the retirement and health element. That gap is called health span. It's called a health span gap. And so there are people pushing longevity, okay? But the problem is, unless you do that, all you do is you live longer, sicker. Okay? So in the context of this conversation, we're talking about healthy longevity, okay? It's not just about living longer, it's about living longer, healthier, okay? And healthier longer too. And that matters a lot because we're at a stage in the market where there's a lot of technologies that are coming up in the pipeline that could potentially enable us to do that. Some of them are proof points, okay? Meaning that we've been able to show that within, sort of, for example, mice. We don't know yet how to translate that to humans, and there's a lot of questions about how to do that technically. We're not going to go into that. But if you look at the US National Academy of Medicine, every once in a while they can create something that is called a sort of roadmap exercise, okay? And what they do is they bring people from all over the world, the top scientists, they do sort of an IPCC of healthcare, and the topic they choose is very significant as a result, because it comes up with policy recommendation. I'll let you guess what the topic was. It was healthy longevity. Came out about a year ago, they've gone through all the regions, and some of the stuff that you'll hear is sort of informed by this, along with a few other things of reports that are in the progress that will be released in November. Now, we've established the case that this is an important element. We've established that what are we talking about? Healthy longevity, meaning you're able to live longer, but you live a healthier life. I like it to bring it back to you, okay? And when I mean you, it's not you as an investor, as an individual, okay? Think for a second, okay? Try to think about you're living till 120 healthy, okay? You're growing old, but through a longer time. What are the key questions you hold when you think about what that means to you? Give it some thought. Some people can close their eyes. This is a very workshop space, so feel free to close your eyes if you feel like it. But give it some genuine thoughts. What are the 5 key questions about your life or yourself that you would apply if you were to live that long? Okay? And if you feel, there's also, like, if there's papers and things, like, this is a workshop space. We're not going to sit. We're going to be able to move around. Does anybody want to start? The ability to survive. So how are you going to essentially, your saving span, exactly. Right? Yeah.
Do you want the mic?
Yeah, if you can have a mic, please.
So I've been thinking about this for quite a while now, and after reading Ikigai and watching The 100, which you go back to normative life, you should be able to live to 100. So to me, is connected to what you just said, it's, am I the only one who's going to live up to 120? Because I don't think I want to be, and I've lost everybody else around me, right?
Right. So in the case of this exercise, and that's a good point, because when we're going to do the visioning exercise, we're going to assume that this is, it relates to two things. Access, okay, and cost of those things. For the purpose of this conversation, we're going to envision the system change. So assume that this is widely distributed. Because you're correct, some people may not want that the social structure affects a lot of that. So for the sake of the exercise, assume, because we only have an hour, in practice you would take more time to do this. If you only have an hour, let's assume that this is the case everywhere, okay? So that's the end state that we're thinking about. People are able to live healthier, longer, and as a result, in those cases, have to potentially think about how they're going to spread, the income that they generate over time. Their spending and investment, saving and investments are going to change. That has implications for the economy. That's one direction we can explore. It has others. What else do you come to mind? Yeah. Sorry, I kind of hear. Can you pass the mic?
Can the Earth support that many people consuming for that long? Or
So the sustainability implications, yeah? That's a good question. There are multiple, so just to give you a sense, so there's a report that is going to come up in November for one of the work that we've been doing, where we've polled people from across the world, asking very much the specific questions. Sustainability implications are not always, there are some regions that are more concerned by this than others. It turns out they're not necessarily the ones you'd expect. So Japan, for example, is very much concerned by that, even in part because they have a lot of population, but they're not that big compared to their resources, By contrast, the US doesn't care that much at that point, yet. What else? What are some of the questions you're thinking about?
Purpose.
Huh?
I would actually question even the purpose.
The purpose of what?
Yeah, what for we live? I mean, for 120 years. So how long we continue to do what we do?
So I'm
After a stage, you get bored, and then you wonder, what are we going to do? Let's say, So it.
So a big part of that depends on how healthy you are, right?
Yeah.
If you're able to have healthy life years, okay, then you might be able to do other things. So that's. Yeah. So, for example, if you ask people, if you had 10 years of healthy life, if there was a medicine that would enable you to get these healthy additional life years, would you take it? And what would you do with it? Right? What would you do with those 10 years? Europeans do not care. It's very interesting. Like twice the global average, they wouldn't take it. About 43%. Which is very surprising. Very, very counterintuitive. There are plenty of reasons for that. But basically, the point that you're talking about describes how do you go about living your life and working and finding your passion. And there are implications for this. So we were talking about the savings and investing. That has implications for the economy, particular pension funds, because they're supposed to reinvest the savings. But if people live longer, they have more liabilities. There's a whole economy element thing here, but there's a whole workforce element too, right? Are you going to retire earlier for a bit and then come back to work? Are you going to spend all that time and then retire? How are you going to go about this? And of course, these two are related. What else comes to mind? Fertility, yes. How much? If we live longer and we're fertile, then there's a population potentially risk, right? We know that economics tends to bring fertility rates down. So the economic spread across the world would have an impact on this, right? There's a sustainability element that you were talking about. One more idea before we go into the exercise. Healthcare systems, yes. If you are able to live healthy longer, the way you're going to interact with the healthcare system is going to be completely different. Completely different. Which is a wonderful segue, because now we're going to move into an exercise. So this is where, Daria, I think your thought about, do you want to have two groups? There's two options here, okay? I'll give them to you guys to discuss, to figure out. One option is to explore the economic implications of this, okay? And when I mean economy, I think, financial system, pension funds and the way we interact. Retirement issues, how to go about this, etc. Okay. Another more is the healthcare design. Okay, so how do we interact with the healthcare system? How has it changed? And what are some of the implications of this? Okay, it's essentially a shift from, sick care to prevention, but that has implications about how you go about this. And as a result, there's a whole bunch of, in some cases, stranded workforce aspects. So if you think of patient care, like aged patient care, all the nurses, there's a whole workforce issue at play. Not everywhere, because it's socially dependent. In some cultures, the family takes care of the elderly, but in places where this economy has boomed, then suddenly you have a workforce issue. So, by show of hands, who's interested in exploring the economic implications? Healthcare and societal aspects. Huh? Healthcare. Healthcare? Healthcare? Yalla. Economic. Okay, cool. So I'll take the economy if you want, or let's have someone work on the economic implications, and we'll have a group perhaps just explore the healthcare elements. Where do you want them, Daria?
Hi everyone, I'm Daria. So I think we'll go over there for the healthcare, and we'll stand around that board. This is where what Ellie said in terms of this being interactive, and then the economic system will go over there. So just vote with your feet, and you'll meet you there if you want to work on healthcare, meet you there if you want to work on economy.
In part, two different futures being explored as well. We'll explore that in a bit. But I'd like to, Lindsay, if you can take a microphone, and if we can debrief a bit about what has happened over here and where the conversation was, and then we'll pass it on over there.
Okay.
Or a quick debrief. Thank you.
Great. We had a really amazing, dynamic conversation amongst our group. So we talked about what we need to let go of if we're thinking about health systems and societal norms that are prevalent in our current state. So one is medicine 2.0 today, which is thinking about treating the disease after we have it, rather than thinking about prevention of disease in the first place. So we need to let that go. Right now, there's also this rush to educate. When our kids are young, it's immediately at age 2, put them into daycare. They need to start learning how to read, less time for play. So we need to let go of this rush to educate and a rush to mature our children. And as a result, there's declining creativity, because there's this also rush to get into social media and everything else. Not enough guardrails from government around healthcare. So this sense that governments are just letting us consume whatever we want and smoke whatever we want and drink whatever we want in some countries, and that's not necessarily good for us. So let that go. Highly processed foods, nuclear family structures, prevalent today, maybe not that conducive to living to 120. And then current social norms dictating our life stage choices, when we get married, when we have children, overconsumption, societal and technological progress has led to health issues. So just the way that we structure society, and we expect that people are going to go and sit at a desk from 8 a.m. until 6:30 p.m. every single day, which is leading us to not live very healthy lives. And that's not conducive to this amazing future that we could have. Also, that relates to just capitalist society in general. If we look at the future and what it could look like, much greater focus on well-being, on mental health, purpose. A lot of people who are able to live longer have this greater sense of purpose in their lives. It drives them. And so relating back to letting go of a capitalist society where you're just focused on making money, what if you're able to live longer because you're thinking about how you can have a greater impact in society? End-of-life care would change. You might see more managed euthanasia, the ability to kind of end your life when you want to, and having more control over that. Career paths would completely change. You might have the opportunity to get educated at multiple different points in your life and have many different career paths over the course of your life and go back to school. And much greater kind of tribal, community-oriented society. So those are just some of the characteristics that we saw going into the future. We started to look at what's happening today. AI was mentioned, genomic mapping was mentioned, helping us to understand what our risk factors are. And then the Norwegian model, where there's a much greater sense of inclusivity. There's a lot more encouragement from the government to take time off when you have children, to work a shorter day, and to just have more balance in your life overall. So that's where we got, but really incredible discussion.
Wonderful. Does anybody from the economics group want to do a debrief of what we discussed? I'm going to volunteer you to do it.
Thanks for calling me out. What went into the goal? All right, so initially we started with the economic models that we think are antithesis to living for 120 years and that are detracting from from what an economic system would look like if we were all to live to 120 years. And then started plotting the ideas that would facilitate an economy that works for such long lives, and then the interim in between, right? So what are things that are helping along and what things that don't make sense? And from that, you get a sense of what are more immediate investment theses and ideas versus things that are maybe not there yet, and where are things that perhaps are working now but will probably die out, right? So for you to think about your investment horizon. So some of the things we threw around, amongst things that are dying is like an existing insurance system, the existing education, which you guys touched on, but the education and work/life balance. So the schooling and work structure, the structured workday, week or year, our housing system and mobility are things that probably won't work with such an enlarged population. And then things that how these would be transferred into an optimal economic system that works for people that are 120 years is having healthcare that is both preventative and I guess diagnostic, preventative, and treating. Also natural resources that are more sustainable and more of them, so alternative natural resources. Different capital markets that are perhaps more patient, and that's driven by government regulations and career and work-life balances that are very different than where we are today. And I guess the facilitators or in between are things like better knowledge sharing and more, let's say, longevity-driven healthcare and clinics and tools, wearables, etc. Customized healthcare that works for all of us, and then more data and learning.
Thank you so much. So just as we're ending, the encouragement is not just the kind of insights that were taken away, and I'm really struck by the intersections between the two systems, and I think that's just a reminder of how intersectional all these systems are. We could have worked on education and had sort of a different perspective, but probably touch on a lot of the things that were uncovered here. You know, a lot of what's happening in those green Post-its are already present in our system. We call them kind of pockets of the future in the present moment, and there's lots of pockets as you step back out into the Institute and into the sessions. And how you pay attention to that, what we're attuned to, and hopefully that's what this session has done, is given you an attunement. How we kind of notice those pockets and where we put our energy is one of the things that we hope that you can take from this session. So hopefully see you when we're all 120 and doing a similar session right here. But also this tool, which has lots of background to it, but as you can see is really quick to pick up, is something that we hope you can kind of also take into your pocket and in your hands as you go back out. So thank you so much for joining.